And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesday morning's OTB AM. We're here with you all the way until 9:30. A very busy show for you this morning. We're going to cover loads of bits and pieces, look back at last night's football, look forward to tonight's football and start the build-up to the weekend's Six Nations. Darren is here with us this morning. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. Very well.
We were marvelling over how good Paul Pogba is at football. Who knew? If only he'd ever shown any signs of being this good at football, then maybe Jose Mourinho would have picked him in his right position and not actually... Remember, he dropped him. Remember, he left him out of his team for a while.
Spectacularly dropped him. Wasn't including him, stripped him of the club vice-captaincy, called him a virus at a team meeting and basically said that you are holding Manchester United back. It's hard to believe that it's the same player that Mourinho seemed desperate to offload in January.
I mean, if he was playing like this, it would have been different for Mourinho. But maybe Mourinho could have got him to play like this, and that's the manager's job.
It's the cult of manager and personality, though. I almost believed Mourinho when he said, Pogba is the problem. I cannot get the best out of Pogba because he is too difficult to manage. His ego is too great, and he does not believe in the bigger cause. Yesterday, it looked like he had complete belief in whatever the bigger cause is. He was able to function effectively in the marvellous skill he has as an individual. I mean, the cross for the first goal is absolutely incredible, and just even the little check back where just that moment of thought and presence to do that. But the fact that he was able to function not just as it's all about Paul Pogba, he was able to play in a way which made Manchester United better and made them tick. He is the kind of player that, and now looks why they broke the world record. It's now starting to make sense, because for a while it looked like he would never get to that level. For a while it looked like he would have the Dupay exit or the Di Maria exit. It looked like it was going to be one of these marquee signings that don't really work out and you quietly shuttle them out the door.
Yeah, or you try and get your money back from Paris Saint-Germain. Now they would get their money back, you feel. Like he's playing well enough that anybody, if they did want to move on from him, they could, and it wouldn't be a massive loss. Or he looks like the type of player that you could build a team around, or certainly put an N'Golo Kante beside, or somebody to, to make him effective in every moment of the game. Yeah,
it was just one of those nights, wasn't it, where everything worked out for them as well. They even had a bit of luck with the double save from Romero from the free kick to David Luiz. He stops that, and then he gets the follow-up. So, without playing particularly wonderful at times, there were times where you thought Chelsea could have got back into the game, or even when it was 0-0, they could have gone ahead. They managed to keep their noses in front, a bit like the Tottenham game where Spurs were the much better side for a lot of it, but United were still able to control the periods they needed to control. And tactically, I just thought they play a really nice brand of counter-attacking football, and it's not by accident anymore. Some goals under Mourinho, it looked like it was
a fluke.
Yeah.
Well, the ones against City last year, remember? Was it City that came back from 2-0 down?
Yeah, and he pretends to be a football genius by the end of it. But it looks like they have a plan, and it looks like all of the players actually, they have faith in it. They trust the manager, and the manager trusts them, which was something that's been absent at United for months.
Yeah, okay, let's take you to the newspaper headlines this morning. It's a busy enough day. Sorry, this is what's coming up on the show. That's a good idea, isn't it? So Seamus, Darby and Jackie Tyrell were in studio talking with Owen, from Kerry. Seamus Darby, obviously famous enough for stopping the 5 in a row. Jackie Tyrell has his own 5 in a row story, or not quite, so obviously that will come up for a conversation around about 8:25 this morning. We'll talk about Chelsea and Manchester United with Daniel Harris to see exactly how excited he is by how things are progressing for Manchester United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It's getting to that point now where it looks inevitable that he will be given an opportunity at least to take on the job. He's got some heavyweight support. Ryan Giggs in the papers yesterday saying that he thinks Solskjaer should get the job now. Liverpool against Bayern will preview that at 9:05, and Wexford Hurling, Lyng is going to join us a little bit later on. He was covering that game for TG Carr at the weekend in their come from behind victory against 14-man Tipperary. What does that actually mean for where Wexford are at the moment under Davy? A lot of talk that year 3 of the Davy experiment is the year it goes pear-shaped, which is to kind of parallel the whole Mourinho thing. And I think that, I don't know about that.
Third season syndrome, is it a real thing?
Yeah, well, it's certainly, you can't now look at retrospectively at what Mourinho's done and say it isn't from his perspective. But is it, I think, for Davy, certainly the Wexford players were pretty enthusiastic about him coming back, so.
Yeah, they drove to his house and convinced him to stay on when he was having doubts about it. So I don't think that it's a case of them getting tired of his voice, or it certainly wasn't at the end of the season by the looks of things. But, the results and the performances maybe haven't what they've hoped for. I wouldn't. It doesn't look like a guy who is lost it all or isn't incapable of turning it around. I don't think his voice has got to a point where it's still not able to get a performance out of it.
No, and also you've got to remember where they've come from. So, they've come from a situation where things look pretty bleak for Wexford Hurling to a point where, okay, so it's 2 seasons ago now, but Davy got them to the Leinster final and 60,000 people showed up. And now they believe that they're a proper Division 1 hurling team who are there on merit, and players seem to want to play for the county in a way that there was a 10-year period there where players were walking away, good players who wouldn't commit for whatever reason. So,
are the expectations just too unrealistic then?
And they're also making a fortune in America, isn't that? And let's face it, isn't that what every county board needs? So, the reason the lads are coming in a little bit later on is they're both in the new series of Laker Gale. So we'll talk a bit about that in a couple of minutes' time. But first, I'm going to take you through the newspapers. So there you go. Sarri on the brink is the back page headline on the Times Ireland edition after the 2-0 defeat at home last night. Generally, you get the impression that the cup doesn't matter when it comes to sacking of managers, but perhaps being beaten at home by Manchester United is the type of thing that might eventually poke the big Russian bear that is Roman Abramovich.
I mean, managers have been more successful and sacked for less at Chelsea. It's hard to see a way back because, for all intents and purposes, it's very clear that he's lost the dressing room. Usually you'd have some kind of sympathy for Chelsea managers when this happens because there's an air of an inevitability about it. But the fact that the Sarri ball and his whole game plan seems to be centred around playing your most talented players out of position and persisting with playing your most talented players in a position that they're not used to, you wouldn't have a whole lot of sympathy for him when it does fall the axe eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I have a little bit of sympathy that he was trying new stuff, and you try new stuff in the Premier League and get hammered. But at the same time, it doesn't seem to make that much sense, the new stuff that he's trying. And then also he throws all his players under the bus. Yeah,
that doesn't help. I mean, if the players are for it, if they're on your side and they're willing to try it, but all of the murmurs and all of the noise out of Chelsea is that the players don't like this, they're uncomfortable. You saw Kante even yesterday give the ball away once or twice in possession, real uncharacteristic things where he was just sloppy and he looked out of sorts. I think a lot of his poor form is down to the fact that he's not comfortable playing the position he's in. Yeah. He's not getting the best of the players he has.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the next new manager at Chelsea comes in and does and is able to achieve. The other back page story on the Times Ireland edition is that Henshaw is set to be ready for the Italy clash. Obviously, Chris Farrell is injured and is coming back from injury. Gary Ringrose, it says, is still also recovering from injury, although his was seemed like a fairly minor hamstring and it sounded like he was going to be back for this, but there's really no point in rushing anybody back. So it looks like Robbie Henshaw will be fine, and Tyke Byrne is back in the squad, but while it looked like Ian Henderson was coming back, he now faces a sighting and so may not be available. So back page of the Irish Independent this morning is Pogba planing in, having scored the second goal last night for Manchester United, and Henderson sighting gives Schmidt fresh headache for Italian clash. I mean, it's a bit of a headache, but it's nowhere near as bad a headache as it would have been if this had been for a big game.
Well, the first rounds of the Six Nations, to be without both of them was probably, I would say, the bigger headache. It is a bit of a pain when he just gets back fit, shakes that issue, having missed the opening 2 rounds, and he's not available. I think in terms of getting rid of the old ring rust, Schmidt probably would have chanced him this week. But the fact is, I don't think Italy can put out a team, or Ireland can put out a team capable of losing to Italy. So I don't think that's any kind of setback or a blow.
And if Tyke Byrne's fit, you want to see him in the team, right?
Absolutely. I think he has more to offer in terms of showing Joe what he can do and showing Ireland what he can do. I think we know what to expect with Ian Henderson. I don't think Ian Henderson is a guy that has too much to prove to anyone, especially in a game against Italy.
Rhys Ruddock is out. Dan Levy obviously is still out. Rory O'Connor is saying, though, that there is a chance Chris Farrell could be available, despite the fact that he came off injured at the weekend. So fingers crossed that is the case and that he actually might be able to keep his place. Men United, Solskjaer's Reds deliver perfect team performance to snuff out Chelsea. And then Mike Quirk is pictured above the masthead with a brilliant column today. Bluffers and snake oil salesmen are a dime a dozen in modern GAA. He's got, I'm just going to read, he reads a tweet, he includes a tweet that he saw recently. Over the weekend I read a tweet that had me shaking my head in disbelief. Senior football team, training since mid-Jan, haven't touched the ball yet, have done laps, 400 metres and 200 metre runs. Played challenge recently, beaten well. Cue more running, they weren't fit. Football is expected to make a return sometime in late Feb. Players deserve better than this. He's talking about how periodisation for team sports has largely proved to be ineffective as opposed to intensity style training, and he quotes from Fergus Connolly's book Game Changer. But I know it's just a brilliant column from Mike Quirk talking about how coaching is the be-all and end-all when it comes to GAA, and there's 11 million being spent, and that people need and clubs need to give coaches the opportunity to perpetually learn, because it ain't no fun running laps and getting beaten.
That's just mental torture. Like, I cannot understand what you'd possibly hope to glean from that. Is it a case of just flogging your players to a point? You will weed out the ones who don't want to do it. You will get a gauge on their real commitment to the cause by just putting them through unfair and unrealistic scenarios, just making them run to death. It's absolutely pointless.
It's BS. And finally for me, the Telegraph says exclusive at the top there, you might not be able to read it, Gatland the front runner to replace Jones after World Cup. So they think Warren Gatland. Is this black ops from the Daily Telegraph trying to unsettle the Welsh in the week of an England-Wales game? Is that all this story is? Is it somebody from the RFU using their favourite organ, newspaper organ, the Telegraph? Is that all this is?
I don't know. I don't think you can unsettle them with anything around Gatland, because his future is relatively clear in that it's finite. We know what's happening. We know he's moving on. So I don't think even the link, whether it might be tenuous or it might be legit, will be enough to change anything. I mean, we saw the absolute chaos though that it caused with Spain at the World Cup when Lopetegui was found out that he was not he's going to be the Real Madrid manager after the World Cup. That seemed to upset a couple of players, so maybe there is something in it. I'm not so sure though.
It's England that he's going to.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's the week of the game that this is leaking out. Who's leaking that? Who does this story benefit?
Well, it benefits England, obviously. It benefits England by trying to unsettle the Welsh.
If he's not going there, like only if he's not going there. I don't know. Okay.
I think it's a shot in the dark.
Okay, look, I'm going to play you this clip. The new series of Lake Regale kicks off tomorrow night with the first of 6 hour-long specials on TG Carr. Starts with Jackie Tyrell at 9:30. As we mentioned earlier, we've got a brilliant feature interview with Jackie and Seamus Darby coming up later on this morning. Here's a snippet of what's to come. It's Seamus Darby recounting the story of an undercover trip to Kerry in the summer of 1981 for a bit of spying.
I was down on holidays in Kerry and I went to see them train in 1981, yeah, that's true. I was down hanging around and I was with my wife at the time, and we went in to see them train in Tralee. No one knew me, or there was no big deal about it.
If only they knew then.
Well, only any of us knew then, I suppose.
Did you pick up anything from the train, and did you see anything? Or?
Yeah, I just saw a couple of things, Jack.
Yeah. Did you see where the keeper stood in the corner that was open?
No, I was just interested to see them train, and that's all. I never expected to be back playing with Offaly in my wildest dreams, really, at that stage, you know. But I get on very well with most of the Kerry lads, as it happens. Now, I'm not saying I'm as popular as you said, but I get on very well with them, really, you know, and that's grand as well. I meet them here and there, and they're all nice lads, you know.
And what about yourselves and Tip? Yeah, sure. I suppose it's the classical Kenny Tip rivalry. It's intense. It's you know, we wouldn't be mad about each other, but then only at the Amanda Stapleton charity game that we played recently, we all, you know, as soon as any little Kenny lads were asked, you know, a great cause like that, jumped at it. We went up. They looked after us unbelievably well afterwards. We're on the marquee, bit of grub, right few pints, right bit of crack and good bit of slagging. And they had, there was players there as new as current tip players like Dan McCormick, and then you had Michael Webster, who we would have played with down through the years. And I think at the end of it, when you see things like that, it humbles you and it brings you back to it's a game, and there's more to life than it. And particularly when you come out of the intense bubble of inter-county hurling or football.
Yeah, great stuff there from the lads, and more of that to come in a little bit. So we're going to bring you through the rest of the tabloid newspapers headlines this morning. United in blue heaven. Pogba, he trusts us and we trust Ole. And look, the digs at this stage are not necessarily directed anymore to Jose Mourinho, but if you can kick Mourinho while he's down, why not? Red arrows flying. United turn up the heat on Sarri. It looks like the end is coming for Maurizio Sarri and Sarri ball. Fitzpatrick, Ireland have depth to rule the world. This is interesting. Sean Fitzpatrick is saying that Ireland are the only team in the world who the All Blacks fear. Similar stuff coming from Brian Habana in today's newspapers. So they obviously haven't been watching England, or else they're trying to provoke a response from the English rugby team. Firmino adds to club concern. So Bobby Firmino has apparently a virus at the moment, and Virgil van Dijk is suspended. Dejan Lovren is struggling with a hamstring injury and is also likely to miss out. So it's not quite dealing with a full deck tonight for Liverpool against Bayern tonight at 8 o'clock. Leeds have been fined 200 grand for spying easy sliders Pogba hails beautiful win as Sarri's time looks up is the back page headline on the Star this morning, and the Mirror, surrender. Chelsea boss on the brink as superb United march into the quarterfinals. And Hendo, we can handle the pressure, is Jordan Henderson looking, like he can't handle the pressure in the picture. And that's just a training picture, so we'll see if he's telling the truth. Right, let's move on. We want to look back on last night's 2-0 win for Manchester United at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea. Daniel Harris is with us this morning. Daniel, it just keeps getting a little bit better week after week. I mean, notwithstanding the PSG game, but this is exactly what you would have hoped for from a team who had suffered what Manchester United suffered against PSG. And it was as routine a win at Stamford Bridge as any team is ever going to have.
Yeah, PSG game even, United stayed with them for the first half, and then when they lost a couple of important players, Solskjaer made the wrong changes. It was only once those two players went off that PSG looked to cut above United. Whereas Chelsea actually looked a lot like United of the last few seasons, where they started okay without threatening that much, and as soon as things went wrong, the result was only ever going one way, and they didn't really have anything they could do about it. And it's really strange watching Chelsea play. On the one hand, they're really Hazard and change anyway. That if you stop Hazard, if he doesn't have a good game, then Chelsea are going to struggle to score. But to see the way that Sarri keeps going about things, at half-time I tweeted that I was looking forward to seeing Willian come on for Pedro and Barkley to come on for Kovacic. And sure enough, that was what happened, followed by a right-back for a right-back. And what Sarri's saying in that situation is, my system is perfect for every single game, and the only thing that's going wrong is the players. But if you're the opposition, you know how Chelsea are going to play. There's no element of surprise, so you can stop that. And the players who play for Chelsea are sitting there thinking, every team knows what they're going to do, and the manager's going to do nothing from the bench to affect the flow of that game. And the manager has no silverware, has no illustrious career that speaks for his method. And Chelsea are a mess.
What is Sarri ball? How would you define it now at this point, apart from a failed experiment? But how would you define it?
Sarri ball, I wouldn't really accredit someone who's done what Sarri's done in the game as someone who deserves his name to be suffixed with ball. It's worked really well at one particular team. So the Sarri ball that we saw at Napoli was they played really fast, really quick football, moving the ball along the back four for as long as it took to suck the opposition in before getting it forward really quickly. But at Chelsea, he doesn't have the midfield for that. He doesn't really have the runners for that either. So what you see at Chelsea is you see a lot of possession and a lot of sideways passes, and a team that doesn't really look like they know how to score a goal.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is completely finished here at Chelsea for Maurizio Sarri, or is this actually one of those things where, contrary to all of the evidence that we've ever seen from the club, they will back the manager and ship out a lot of their players this summer?
That seems very unlikely. It seems more likely that he'll do well to see out. You'd be more surprised if he stayed in it for the full season or stayed into next season than if he got sacked this week. There's still quite a lot that can go wrong. They won't lose to Malmo on Thursday, but they could easily take another gubbing off Man City in the League Cup final. And if they do, that'll probably be it, because they want to make the top four. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. And the only way that it is going to happen is if they get rid of Sarri, probably, because the players aren't playing. It's not that the players aren't playing for him. It's not that they're not trying, but they don't look like they've got any confidence in what he's doing and what they're doing. And they don't look like they lost 4-0 to Bournemouth. They lost 6-0 to Manchester City. Like, those are not excusable results, particularly if they come in quite close proximity to one another. And last night, after United scored, the game was over. And there's no way that's not sustainable.
Let's move on to Manchester United, because there were some changes to the team from what looks like the first team. Some of it injury enforced, some of it just because who knows? Maybe he wants to see what he's got with a few of these players. But it does begin to look like there isn't only one first choice team for Manchester United. Let me rephrase that. He has some depth, which is even slightly better than maybe we thought it was in the first place.
I think, he does have some depth, but in the end, it's likely to be the same players that win you the games. So, although it was without Lingard and Martial, and in the first 20 minutes that showed. United played okay. It was a relatively even game. Chelsea perhaps had the better of it. Like, Higuain's header was the best chance of that period. But in the end, United had Pogba and had Rashford, and those were the two best offensive players on the pitch, and they are fixtures of Mourinho's first 11. And the midfield that he played is his first choice midfield. So I think that he does have some options. So Mata played quite well yesterday. Lukaku didn't play so well, because those are players that you can bring on and they might be able to change the game because they're different to what you've got. Or they're players that you can start who might do something because they're not rubbish, but you wouldn't be wanting to start two of them like you had to last night in any big game. But the difference last night was that instead of starting them in a Mourinho front three with Mata on the right, Rashford on the left and Lukaku in the middle, he played them in a diamond which played to their strengths, and I think you saw the difference.
Where did Mata play, at the tip of the diamond or on the left side?
Yeah, Mata's tips. Oops, I don't really want to say that very much, but Mata played at the tip of the diamond, and he didn't play that well. But just having a player there means that Jorginho can't do that much, and Mata, perhaps the only player in the whole Premier League who's less athletic than Jorginho, stopped Jorginho from really doing anything, and that showed up Chelsea's system again. And I mean, Mata sat on Jorginho when United played Chelsea in the league when Mourinho was the manager, and the same thing worked pretty well then. But United's two centre-backs played really well. Luke Shaw played really well, and United were too strong in midfield once they got going. And they had the class of Pogba and the class of Rashford, and it was actually a really interesting performance from Rashford, who it was almost a Wayne Rooney style performance, where particularly in the second half he was a one-man forward line, and Chelsea couldn't really deal with him. Every time he got the ball, even when he just looked like he was going to put it into space, because as soon as he puts a defender in a race with him, it's pretty much over. And they couldn't handle him. He was constantly in the game, and he was able to focus the game almost around him. And it's only very special players that are able to do that.
Yeah, it definitely looks like he's progressing much more quickly under Solskjaer than you might have anticipated, because obviously the talent was there, but generally young players like this, it takes them quite a while to get to grips. The number of minutes he's playing, the confidence that he gets from being first choice, that's all having an immediate dividend.
Yeah, I think so. Although he actually, in the dog days of Mourinho, just before the end, in the last few weeks, you could see that he'd taken it up a level. He was starting to affect games. He was starting to, not affect games, but he was starting to impose himself on games at the crucial moment. And I think it was always likely that as soon as his hold-up play improved, that was going to be able to be the case, because he had almost all the other attributes. The finishing, he's not the greatest finisher, but he was always going to improve the finishing. But once he could make the ball stick when it came to him, then everything else is in place, because he's got ridiculous pace. He's got great imagination. He combines well with the other players. He can run with the ball. He's got tricks. He can shoot from distance. So once he was able to make the ball stick so that he was in the game more, there was just so much more that he was going to be able to do. And that's not an improvement that's come from Solskjaer. I think that's an improvement that's come from him, because we saw it. We saw it when things were really bad under Mourinho. Of course, under Solskjaer, he's got the confidence of knowing that he's number one, and you're seeing that in the goals and the things he's prepared to try. But just that one element of retaining possession when he gets it is facilitating all the other things that we know he's got.
We talked about Ander Herrera before the PSG game. I was keeping an eye on what the Man United fans in the office were saying, and they were very annoyed with his performance against PSG, and they kind of seem to still be holding some stuff against him from the first 18 months of his career at Man United. But it does feel like, again, he's getting better and better, and they're beginning to understand a bit more about what potential he has and what role he might have in the team into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't hold the PSG game against him, because he's just not that level of player, and he's never going to be. So it's hard to hold against a player things that they can't do. And when we spoke before the PSG game, I said that United would have to do it early, because eventually Verratti would take over midfield. And when that happened, United were going to be in trouble. And although it was also precipitated by Lingard and Martial going off, that meant PSG could commit men forward and not worry too much about the counter, it was just also the case that PSG upped the pace in midfield, and United didn't have the players to deal with that. And Herrera is a good player. He's got a lot of attributes. He really understands the game. He's got a good touch. He's tenacious. He's committed. He orders around the players that are around him. He leads the press, all of that bollocks. But at the end of it, he's not as good a player as Marco Verratti. He's not as good. He's not a high-level player. he's a good player. So last night you saw him ringing the most from his talent, and he has got talent, but against PSG, it's unlikely to matter. And the problem with United's midfield, and feel bad almost criticising it after a game like last night where United's midfield was so good, is that you want Pogba to do Pogba things, to do what Pogba does. And you can get away with that against most teams in the Premier League. But against a top-level European team, Pogba being a superhero and basically doing things that decide the game but not helping you control the game, you're going to need a better and more athletic player than the Nemanja Matic, and ideally a better player than Herrera as well, because there's a lot of running involved, and also you need to retain possession. And that's actually not just a problem of those players, it's also a problem of the defenders. You need to be able to play the ball into midfield well in the first place, not just be looking for hopeful passes. And that's the area, the main area that I'd be looking to strengthen if I was buying United's players in the summer. For me, like, the main thing that has to be done is they need to upgrade Matic. If you upgrade Matic, and if you find that elusive player who can run like Paul Ince and who can pass like Roy Keane, then that would make United a much better team. But that's hard to do, but that is the main change. And if United were able to do that, it would cover a multitude of sins in the defence.
Well, if Chelsea will sell them Matic, maybe perhaps they might sell them N'Golo Kante in the summer, who knows. But I guess that does lead the question. You want to use and keep Paul Pogba as a building block, as somebody you're going to build the rest of the team around. So you identify the type of players that you need to make sure that he can do what he does. Or do you decide that actually, if you do want to be the best team in Europe, that it's great having a Pogba, but actually it would be much better having a different combination of types of players?
Not necessarily. Like, I think if you found the right player to replace Matic, what you could do is you could play Lingard and Pogba in midfield. You'd then need more work from Pogba to appreciate the fact that there was another bloke in there who could also affect the game. But the person you would need would need to be a monster. They'd need to be a passer and a runner. And those players are hard to find. I can't particularly think of one. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but you need someone similar in style probably to Roy Keane, who was able to set the tempo of the play by being a brilliant passer of the ball, but could also cover a lot of ground. I think that if you're trying to get United up to that elite level, you definitely don't get rid of by far the best player in the team, that is Pogba. You need more players of Pogba's quality, not fewer players of Pogba's quality. The question is finding the best format for that. And there are lots of ways to play. So in general, the teams that are going to do well in European competition are teams that are going to control possession. But then Liverpool got to the final last year, and they're not particularly that sort of team. They did it by running the other team off the pitch, which I guess you're also unlikely to do if you've got Pogba. But then another way of doing it is you might buy a centre-back. You buy a back four that could defend the box really well. And you'd strengthen, if United were going to do that, they'd probably want to buy 2, maybe 3 defenders and try and defend really well, and then try and win the big moments of the game. So there are lots of ways of doing it, but I think the main thing is if you were to buy a replacement for Matic, then you would have to decide if you wanted another midfield player to replace Herrera, or you try and put Lingard into midfield and buy a right winger.
The reports seem to be suggesting that it's nearly a fait accompli, nearly a done deal that Solskjaer is going to be the new manager. Do you buy that?
I don't know if it's nearly a fait accompli, because I don't know if can it nearly be a fait accompli. I don't know. Is that tautology? My French isn't that good. Bollocks, but that's about all the French I've got. But if you things can still go very wrong. It just doesn't look like they're likely to. If he gets 4th place, then it seems it'll be very difficult for them to do anything else, because there's already been this very good winning run, and the performances in that winning run in the main are improving. So if you look at the big games United have played, at Spurs, they hung in there and got away with it. Arsenal obviously aren't as good as Spurs, but United played better against Arsenal, showed more control. And then last night they played better than that. So we'll see what they come up with against Liverpool at the weekend. But sometimes it's just a case of right man, right time. So if you think about Pep Guardiola, for example, when he got the job at Barcelona, he hadn't proved his worth for that job. And if he'd started at Cadiz, who are, let's say, a Cardiff-level club, perhaps he wouldn't have been able to do it, because different times and different places work for different managers. So Manchester United in 1986, in the end, turned out to be the perfect place for Alex Ferguson. Would he have achieved the same if he'd ended up somewhere else? You don't know, because different jobs demand different skill sets. And what it does seem is that Solskjaer has a really good skill set for this job. He understands what people want. He understands what the supporters want. He understands how to get the best out of his best players. He understands how to change his tactics to exploit the weaknesses of different teams. And as Manchester United manager, those are really good things that you need to be able to do, because generally your players are going to be better than the players that you're playing against. And so it might just be a case of right man, right time. If they ended up going and giving the job to Mauricio Pochettino, let's say, then it would be hard to argue with that, or even Massimiliano Allegri. Again, you can't really argue with that. Those blokes have done really well and earned the job if it's a job that they want, and if United can bring them in to do it. But if Solskjaer finishes fourth, as a supporter, I would want him to get the job. As a football writer, I would be able to write 1,200 words explaining why I thought that was a decision that was justified. So the club are now in a really good position. And the thing is it seems to me really unlikely that Ed Woodward was sitting there watching mould thinking, perhaps we get this Solskjaer bloke in for Mourinho. It seems much more likely that he took some advice off, who knows, perhaps a plutocrat from Govan. And if Fergie will know that he dropped a bollock in Moyes. If he were to think that Solskjaer would be the right person to get the job, that would be probably a fairly decent recommendation. And he hasn't really put a foot wrong. He changed the team against Burnley. That was a mistake. Managed to get out of it and show that his team had some bollocks. He probably got the changes wrong against PSG at half time, but they're outclassed by a better team with superior resources. So that was a what can you do situation. And similarly as he did against Burnley, he's turned that into a positive by coming back and producing a performance like last night.
Dan, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
No worries, see you again.
Daniel Harris giving us some thoughts on the Manchester United situation last night. If you want to get in touch this morning, you can just use the hashtag OTBAM, or you can always get us on Twitter as well. Now, a couple of things I want to talk to you about here. We're going to talk about this now. Here last night, great show from the National Concert Hall with our friends at Virgin Media. Niall Quinn obviously was part of the lineup. Graham Souness was there, Kevin Kilbane and Brian Kerr too. Obviously the issue with the league in Ireland and the League of Ireland came up. Here's Niall Quinn explaining that he's not in conflict with the FAI, taken from last night's special show with Virgin Media.
But the area that's really interesting, I suppose, is the commercial viability of all this. Okay, and with that, I know the FAI have I think they've something going on with Deloitte at the moment with the clubs, and to say how it might get better, and Deloitte are looking at it on behalf of the FAI. Well, what our group is doing, we'll probably have we would have another group as well known as Deloitte to look at it independently and see what can match up. And this is not anti-FAI against the FAI, this is to go in and increase the voice. Okay, so this is not a fight with the FAI, this is to say, look, this could happen. You're saying this is the way you want it. We're saying this could happen. Then it's the time to get it out there and see what people think. Yeah. And I hope that politicians with the ability, with the keys to the bank, would look on football as deserving of a break, because the very fabric of football is in question here in this country, because we're only going to get worse and worse. The Declan Rice thing and what that thrown up, about players born away from here and what they can do, that hurts. But you know what really hurts? When you look back, and I got some great information from a guy, I won't name him here now, but who's doing a doctorate. He gave me some great information on the players who have stayed at home trying to get into under 17, under 19 teams, under 21 teams. And over the last 30 years, they get to play in the odd friendly. But the amount of players who are just in an academy in England, just because they got to an academy, come and play in all the other matches, it means the aspirations here are stemmed already. And until we stop that, I have great faith that Stephen Kenny will actually do his bit to stop that. Yeah. But there has to be more. And if our view that we take, the professional commercial view that will be brought on soon, and we'll bring that to the FAI, and if the FAI's piece with Deloitte, if it can marry up and if there can be pressure put on, then we've all done something right.
Yeah, it's Niall Quinn kind of outlining a bit more of the detail behind a vision that he first talked about before Christmas. Johnny Ward, good morning to you.
How are you?
There was a mixed response when Quinn came out with this first. As there tends to be, there was like a focus on one tiny aspect of it, and the rest of it was immediately like, "Wah!" But actually, you know, as time has gone on, he's been committed to it. He's explained a bit more. He's gone and he's met people, and it hasn't. He's gone to public meetings, like, you know, off the radar public meetings, as opposed to this being about anything other than what he says it is. And I think everybody now begins to accept his bona fides, I hope. And I think as well that if you are going to succeed in football in Ireland, somewhere along the way you have to bring the FAI with you. You can go to war with the FAI all you want, but they control the game. They'll always control the game. They're the power brokers in the game. So you need somehow to make a combination with them, whatever that is, at whatever level.
Yeah, you have to play politics as well, and I think Quinn has done that. He said that, you know, the FAI, you know, they may not be perfect, but they do run this country. And it's funny, last night I was reading Neil Horgan's book about Cork City, his second book. He wrote the first one, I think, in 2008, and he wrote the second one in 2009, and Daniel MacDonald gave it to me, and I just started last night, and he was bringing back some reports that I'd kind of forgotten about. The first one was the Genesis report, which was looking into the League of Ireland. Around the time was the Aircom League. The FAI even commissioned a report from the Saipan debacle, and there was another report then commissioned subsequently, which more or less said kind of everything's fine, we can survive, and it promoted the idea of changing to a 10-team league, which the league did. And Neil Horgan was making the point that we kind of need radical change here. And as much as he said, you know, the FAI has done a lot of kind of bad stuff for the league, he said at least they've brought in an under 15, under 17 league, under 19 league, and that's now become an under 13 league. I think that's huge for the future of the game in this country. But I suppose the theme that was running through was survival was basically your chief aspiration in the League of Ireland. And when Niall Quinn came in with these proposals, I suppose newspapers maybe focused in on some of the more extreme suggestions, like how we might fit in post-Brexit in terms of bringing in players from continental football that might see this as with a view to a move to Britain, which I actually think isn't necessarily that mad.
Or Europe.
Or Europe, yeah.
So you come, you do your residency. There's like one of the ideas they had was that there would be special sporting circumstances whereby you would qualify for citizenship quicker than the normal population, and that as a result the league would improve because foreign investors would basically buy players. They would come here, live here for 18 months, and then suddenly you'd be able to ship them on.
Yeah. When I was coming in here to do the racing show last Friday, I bumped into Brian Kavanagh, and who'd just come out of the HRITO, he'd just come out of a Brexit meeting. And I suppose the point he was making was that in racing, nobody knows, and it's across the spectrum, nobody knows. But in football, Brexit could have huge ramifications and actually huge positives for this country in the sense of the players going at a very young age will basically just stop. They'll have to be educated here because they won't be able to go over under 18 like Cesc Fabregas did because they're obviously Britain will be out of the EU. So Quinn's timing with this is really good. And you know, at the League of Ireland games last Friday, the crowds were, I'd say, considering Cork usually get the best crowds and weren't playing at home, it was basically the best set of crowds we've had in a long, long time for any round of games in the League of Ireland, including really the last set of games. And there was a real buzz about the place in Inchicore. Even some kind of average enough games that wouldn't normally draw crowds got like 3,000-4,000, and the time seems nigh to kind of look at stuff like this, particularly with the FAI going to move away a bit in 2020, and there is a real sort of 2020 vision kind of timing to this, that Quinn is coming in, and I think he's appreciating that. There's an awful lot of young talent in this country who probably are more likely to stay now, and he, as far as I'm concerned with what he's done, I know that from what I hear, he's spoken to some really highly respected companies about getting involved from the private sector. I think the government will look at it and say they'll probably evaluate how they're funding racing, because every bet, like you know, the bets on the League of Ireland or bets on soccer, that money doesn't necessarily go into soccer. Do you know what I mean? So I think that the narrative in terms of how racing is funding is going to change. The government may look at putting a lot more money into football in this country, and I think a name like Niall Quinn will help. I know he's already spoken to government officials. So obviously Aidan O'Riordan had that think tank talk with Quinn and other individuals there about 2 weeks ago, and the FAI needs to be involved. It's kind of like you know, it's kind of like, I guess when you're a kid and you don't like your parents, but if they give you money every now and then, you know, you go, you know, you're like, well, okay, Daddy, you know. But to be fair to the FAI, like the FAI, if John Delaney expects that there is going to be good publicity coming out of this, and John Delaney's still a very shrewd operator, he will get involved in a positive sense, and we should embrace the FAI for what they want to bring into it. I'm actually quite excited by Quinn's proposals, and as a League of Ireland fan as well, Ger, you know, I've been a fan maybe for the last 20 years or so. There is a sense of this little enclave that we want to protect. It's kind of, and it's like, you know, it's like the Field and the Bull McCabe and outsiders and that, and we're very wary of outsiders, and we're wary of people like Peak Six who want to come in and make money from Dundalk, when I think you probably shouldn't be that wary, because the league isn't in a state where we can turn people down, basically.
Yeah. You need to be cautious. But,
absolutely.
Like, you know, when you get over your caution, you need to be welcoming and kind of... because there is enough football in Ireland, and there's enough heritage of football in Ireland, that we should have a much better product than we have at the moment. Like, I know probably fans don't like hearing it being called that, but like...
Well, I'll call you up slightly on that, in that, like, for the years I follow the league, I would struggle to bring someone along to a game because I would be cringing a bit. Now, Mick McCarthy was at the Pats game against Cork, and it was the first time I felt that in years, because it wasn't a good game. But I was countering that after the game by saying the last 50 Pats games I've seen, this was quite possibly the worst. There wasn't much football played, but the quality of on the pitch now, teams are generally committed to playing football, and I really say to people who go to League of Ireland games, they never go back and say, oh, that was terrible. They actually enjoy the football. I think we're a long way towards getting the product right. The coaching badges are in place now, that the coaches have to have a certain standard in the Premier Division. There are an awful lot of young players playing. The summer pitches, the grounds are generally played on, it's good surfaces, and I think we are getting that right. I think there's an awful lot to do off the pitch, but like to have an under 13, 15, 17, 19, the amount of coaches you need from 13, that's 2 coaches for 5 teams, you know, at the club alone. Like, that's 10 coaches minimum. Their parents start coming to games. You get the club to become more of a part of a community. But in terms of the product, I would say roughly from Dundalk in 2016, I think there's been a sea change in terms of how people view the league, and I think that's fair enough. I definitely think we're getting there with the product, and you do see, whether it's a reflection of the League of Ireland improving or the Irish team regressing, a lot of League of Ireland players went on to play for Ireland.
Yeah,
that wasn't the case.
I guess I'm talking about the whole thing as well. Like, the experience of going to a match is
way behind. Look at Oriel Park. I mean, you know, and you
Dalymount.
And Dalymount is actually probably one of the better ones in some respects. There are only 2 or 3 grounds really that I could say are fit for purpose in the League of Ireland, and I always used to marvel at British football that, you know, if you got the old Vauxhall Conference, if you got promoted from the Vauxhall Conference, there was no way you were going into the Football League unless your ground was up to a standard that most League of Ireland teams can still only dream of.
Yeah, and there's definitely, so like, that's the bit where what should the government be spending money on? Do we really need to be spending money for privately held facilities at clubs, or is that where you can reimagine things and go, well, okay, we're going to have a stadium that is part owned by several Dublin clubs, that is part owned by the government, and that is also a local facility that is used by schools and other sports, if it has to be. Like, whatever deal needs to get done, let's start having those conversations about those deals.
Yeah, and it really is facilities, and the government needs to prioritise stuff like this, because, you know, the value of sport and underage sport and functioning League of Ireland clubs that have good underage levels, and the underage, you know, as well as that, so you can imagine being a 12-year-old who wants to play for Galway United but plays for, say, Shivan Rovers or Merview or something like that. You should have it as your aim to get to the under 13 team. So it should act as a kind of a motivation for underage clubs all over the country. And unfortunately, still the League of Ireland isn't really geographically representative of all the country, because you've like Laois, Kerry, Tipperary, Mayo don't have a League of Ireland club, Monaghan, Cavan, and I think we need to. I still think a 10-team league isn't ideal, but at the same time the standard probably isn't there. But I think we do need to try to encourage clubs around the country to get involved as well.
Yeah, you can have like leagues that bring the best of those players along for the late bloomers.
Definitely.
Who ultimately end up not just being club players. But then you get into the issue that, like, if you do play for one of those clubs in Galway that isn't Galway United, and you go to England at 15 and become a superstar, who gets the money? So
yeah,
like, this is the, and that's kind of at the heart of a lot of those issues when moving the schoolboy clubs out of the schoolboy clubs only into the League of Ireland clubs, it was like, well, who gets the money when a player comes? And ultimately, you know,
I have sympathy for the schoolboy clubs because that's how they funded themselves. You know, you look at great schoolboy nurseries, the likes of Belvedere and all those clubs, Kevin's in Dublin, that would have done that. And in fairness to the FAI, the way it's run, like, it might be a little bit kind of autocratic, the FAI, but they kind of force that through, and I kind of admire them for that, in the sense that we need this to happen. We need the League of Ireland clubs to get those players. And to be honest, sure, I mean, you look at Gavin Bazuna at Shamrock Rovers, but those players going over for big money, like, it doesn't really happen that much. I mean, there are very few young Irish players in Britain. They'll get some money, but we're not talking about astronomical. Even Bazuna gone over, what was a rumour to be 400 or 500 grand? He played several first team games at 16. I think he's turned 17 this month at some stage. But that's, you know, and in fairness to I do have sympathy for those clubs, because the kind of the ground is taken from under them a bit with that. I mean, and they have to survive and adapt now. But I think it's much better for football in this country that it's more spread across the league. And you know, from Galway United's perspective, just from because that's where I'm from, like the lack of cohesion between Galway United and those local clubs like Merview and Salt Hill has been so disappointing. Like, Galway Hurling probably for years and years and years, and All Ireland wasn't won because the inter-club rivalry was incredibly fierce. And
but it's the same. It's the same in every GAA club.
It is
family rivalry within every small club in the country, every political party, every town council. It's like
it is. But is it not for me, from a Galway United fan's perspective, have the first game on Friday night, that there'll be a lot of people from the likes of Merview who won't go because there's an animosity towards Galway United. And Galway United have committed ills in the past, but we need to get by. We need to get past that stage and work towards a goal where from playing under 9 or whatever it is from your local club, you can work your way all up.
Yeah, your League of Ireland team is like playing county, and everybody wants to play.
That's the way I would like to see it. And ultimately, of course, you want to play in England or somewhere else, and you want to play for the international team. But let's all try to work together. And I think Quinn could be a force for that, because I think he is a very benign force in that regard.
All right, just very quickly, Nicky Henderson is all over the papers today because he must have had his the open day yesterday. So, Bouverdare will be a different horse this year, is the headline on the Racing Post. But it kind of feels like we're in the meat and drink now of the proper Cheltenham previews. Yeah,
I guess they're just about to start. Gordon Elliott has his season, his stable tour for organised kind of by Cheltenham today. Willie Mullins tomorrow. So you're kind of getting into the real preview circuit. But there's a strange lack of hype this season for various reasons, because Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott, who what did they have? They did the same amount of winners last year, 7 or 8 anyway. They basically totally dominated Cheltenham. That does not look likely to happen. And the superstars, at one stage about 2 weeks ago, Willie Mullins from the 28 Cheltenham races had 1 anti-post favourite, which is really astonishing. Sam Crowe hasn't developed as Gordon would have envisaged, albeit I wouldn't give up on him. Applejade has come along, but you know there kind of looks to be a lack of a superstar. Bouverdare has obviously suffered a defeat so far, and Might Bite, who was second in the Gold Cup last year, Fernicky, has suffered bleeding issues. So we've also had, in the middle of this, we've had a lack of runners because of the ground, and then we've had the flu. So there have been a lot of things happening in racing this year. So I think headlines like that in the Racing Post, where it's Nicky Henderson guy, Bouverdare will be a different horse this year. I think that's kind of, it's almost like a bid from the Racing Post to say, listen, let's get this game going again, because he's a defending champion and we need a kind of a star to cling on to, and Presenting Percy's trainer doesn't do much media work, and he's seemingly unlikely to run except once before the Gold Cup, and that was over hurdle. So it's been a very, very strange season, and I think Nicky's comments on Bouverdare are an attempt from the Racing Post to say, let's get this show going.
All right, we'll talk a bit more about that on Friday Night Racing this coming Friday. But the new season of Lake Regale kicks off on TG Car tomorrow night. Oh, before I get to that, sorry, let me tell you about this. Over the next few weeks, we will be building up to Cheltenham with a couple of very special off-air shows in association with Bulmers. Our next show is coming up this Thursday night. That's the 21st of February. So that's this Thursday week. Sorry, this Thursday. Not this Thursday week. That's this Thursday. Comedian Jarlath Regan is going to be there with us alongside Brian Cooper, Kate Harrington, ITV presenter Ollie Bell, Paul Carberry and Vogue Williams. There's also live music from Smash Hits. This is an exclusive off-air event, so the only way to enjoy it is to be there in the night. You can head off to offtheball.com to register for tickets. They are free, but you've got to register and you've got to show proof on the day, either by printing your tickets or having them downloaded on your smartphone. It's for over 18s only. Visit drinkware.ie, and it's all thanks to Bulmers and their Road to Gold campaign. Now, let's move on, because as I said, the Lakewood Gale new series starts on TG Car tomorrow night. We get the chance to interview two of the stars of the new season. So 9-time All-Ireland winner Jackie Tyrell from Kilkenny, obviously, the Offaly football legend Seamus Darby, scorer of one of the most famous goals in the history of Irish sport. They sat down together to chat on the concept of 5 in a row, because, you know, they both know a little bit about it. One as a 5 in a row finisher, and one as one who didn't quite make it in 2010. Have a look.
So good news for Gaelic Games fans. There's a brand new series of Lakewood Gale coming your way very shortly, and I'm delighted to say that Jackie Tyrell and Seamus Darby are both getting their own 1-hour specials, and they're both with me in studio. Good afternoon to you, lads. How are things?
Hi, Owen. How are you?
Owen, how are you doing?
So we were going to speak to you both individually, and then we realised that there's a common theme running between your careers, and that might be a common theme running through this year's All-Ireland Football Championship, and it is the idea of a 5 in a row. Seamus, you famously ended a 5 in a row. Jackie, you famously were part of a team that could have done 5 in a row. I don't think too many people out there actually have sympathy for the ending of your 5 in a row somehow, and we might get into that. But when I say that word, the F word, so to speak, the 5 in a row, what's the first thing that comes into your mind?
Oh, disaster. This slogan that was going around Kilkenny all that early that year, drive for 5. Just the harrowing loss of losing in All-Ireland. Taking out 5 in a row or 2 in a row and 3 in a row, losing in All-Ireland is absolutely, it's gut-wrenching. It tears apart your inside. You're weeks, months later, you're driving down the side of the road and you feel like just pulling in and crying. It just tears you apart from the inside out. And they're things that you'll just carry with the rest of your life. And obviously the 5 in a row then it kind of heaped a bit more hurt and pressure on it. Tipperary beating us as well, and it just all culminates into a disaster of a day and a year for us.
Yeah, it must be, I say facetiously there to start, but it still must be fairly frustrating when people say to you, you've won enough, sure, the 5 in a row didn't matter.
Yeah, you do, but I can understand that, and it's only natural in sport when someone is that dominant. You look at the New England Patriots, and there's a bit of that about them when Man United were going so well, the ABUs. So I can understand why people, you want to see new faces, new profiles, new characters in the game, new winners, new managers. So I understand where that's coming from, but being at the receiving end of it, you just kind of have to bite your lip and go, yeah, we did have some good days, all right.
Seamus, we just reading the newspapers this morning, Mikey Sheehy was talking about 1982, and he says that the hype was so much that he actually felt fatigued on the day of the All-Ireland final against yourselves. Did you realise how much the hype had got to that Kerry team before that All-Ireland?
I don't think so, really. Now, McGee, our manager, would have done a lot of homework. We, as players, wouldn't have known too much about it. In actual fact, I don't think 5 in a row was ever mentioned at training at any time. Certainly, I can't remember it anyway. And I'd say the only time 5 in a row was mentioned when we were just ready to go on the field. And Eugene McGee said in the final words going out to us, there's history going to be made today. Kerry are either going to win 5 in a row, or we were going to be the team to stop them. And that really was the only time I heard 5 in a row. But then again, on the Saturday night before the match, Eugene McGee, well, he's very thorough in the way he prepared. He's very good at doing his homework. And he had discovered at Kerry, down in Kerry, the county board had a bit of an argument about where they were going to bring the cup for 5 in a row, whether it was Killarney or Tralee, which, of course, was a great thing for us to hear. And I would say probably the pressure is on the team going for 5 in a row. As Jackie would be able to tell us. For us, we nothing to lose. We were trying to win an All-Ireland, and it was our first, or we're going to be, 1 in a row. So that was our biggest problem, was to try and win the All-Ireland,
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people at home will have seen the Players of the Faithful documentary over Christmas, and it kind of hammers home this idea that really 1982 kind of gets hammed up as this big shock that happened in Gaelic football, which is a bit of a disrespect to the quality of your team.
I think it actually is now. I wasn't involved the year before or the year before. I wasn't involved for a good few years, but in 1981, Offaly were in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah.
In 1980, they got to the All-Ireland semi-final, and you have to bear in mind that Dublin was probably the best team around at the time, with Kerry. And arguably still the 2 best teams probably ever in the game. So there's no backdoor that time. You had to win the Leinster, you had to beat Dublin. Nearly did it in 79, had them on the rack. Bernard Brogan scored a goal that won it. 1980, they won it. And if you tell someone going out in the Ireland semi-final you're going to score 4-10, you're going to be fairly happy that you're going to be fairly close or you're going to win it. And that's what they did. They scored 4-10 and they still didn't win. So the following year they're back again in the final and then beaten by Kerry. Jack O'Shea scored a great goal that just totally put them away. And then they're back again in 1982. So, you know, I didn't think it was such a very big shock.
No.
That team was coming for a long time and, you know, as I said, Dublin were in Leinster, so you had to get out of Leinster. And then sit and wait until it was Kerry.
Yeah, and then on the personal level as well, I think some people are very quick to say Seamus Darby came off the bench, came out of nowhere that year. But in actual fact, what did he kick? 1-3 in the Leinster final against Dublin?
1-3, yeah. Well, I came back for the Leinster final, actually. I hadn't played for Offaly for 6 years. And what really happened was Richie Connor done his knee. And he'd been playing centre half back, and Shawnee Lowry was playing full forward. So with the result, then the Shawnee Lowry had to go back centre back, and they were looking for a full forward, and I got a call up, and the rest is history, as the lad says. But I wound up playing in the full forward in the Leinster final, a position that I'd say I never played in my life, even with my club.
Yeah.
And I done good in it. So then I pulled a hamstring near the second half of the match, and that finished me for the Ireland semi-final. I was picked full forward, all right, but I couldn't play.
It's interesting looking at Sheehy's quotes today and some of the atmosphere that he paints around the Kerry camp at that time. He says that the Thursday night before the game they were training in Killarney and kicking around really, and they weren't doing a lot, but then coming out after training there were two guys selling 5-in-a-row t-shirts, and he says he never in his life saw Miko as animated and as cranky. Was Cody similar at all around that? I don't think you had 5-in-a-row t-shirts at all. Kerry famously did.
Yeah.
There was nothing to tip Cody over the edge before that final, was there?
No, there wasn't, no, but the whole thing around us at that time was the injuries to John Tennyson and Henry Shefflin. Both had done cruciates in leading up to that. It was just assumed that they were ruled out for the All-Ireland. And even with John Tennyson, he was, and it was only that Henry done his cruciate and that they looked at other options that they kind of said, well, if we're doing it with Henry, we may as well do it with John Tennyson. And subsequently, he actually played the All-Ireland and got through it. So if that hadn't happened to Henry, John probably would have never played in that All-Ireland, which is really, really interesting. But yeah, so for us, it was those injuries, it was the hype. Then the lads started doing a bit of work with the physio Hartman in Limerick, and then there was all this hype. Henry might come back, John Tennyson might come back, and then the evening that they did come back to train, and the crowds were crazy at. So we hadn't t-shirts, but we had this mania going around Kilkenny that, you know, Henry was coming back and that John Tennyson was coming back and that they were going to play. So that was kind of hard to manage at the time. You know, you weren't really in it, you were living in Kilkenny, but you were distancing yourself from it. You know, it didn't take from our focus on it. That looking back, it wasn't ideal, but it didn't take from the fact that, you know, for 70 minutes, Tipperary were just a better team than us and beat us fair and square. But it was just another tricky thing for Brian and us as players within that to manage that. And, you know, it was t-shirts in Kerry. That was the kind of the challenges we had.
Yeah, like it's mad, like, because 28 years on from 82, obviously the role of the media had kind of gone into high promote at that point. There was more, I guess, hyperbole around the greatness of 5-in-a-row teams and stuff like that. But then even if you take from 2010 to here and how social media has exploded, like from a Dublin perspective, this is going to be the most the team has been spoken about in the context of a 5-in-a-row. The question though is, do you think it's going to seep into the camp?
I would look at that Dublin team and Jim Gavin as unbelievably professional and, you know, have all the boxes ticked, but it's so hard to distance yourself from, because 5-in-a-row ramps it up everywhere another couple of levels. Media, your family, everywhere you go, and as the year goes on there'll be more and more talk of it, and the more games they win, if they win a Leinster into Super 8, it just keeps ramping up, and they'll be trying to distance themselves. But if the whole country is talking about it, and in Dublin it's going to be talked about everywhere, it's so hard as an individual to distance yourself from it. But they are ultra professional, but it's going to be a challenge that this great Dublin team haven't come up against yet. They have faced all challenges as regards teams, as regards losing a quality player like Jack McCaffrey. Like, it's amazing looking at that Dublin team. When you kind of compare them and us, I look at them and they lost Rory O'Carroll, probably one of the best full-backs in the country. Jack McCaffrey went off travelling for a year. And I was kind of comparing it out, like, if we lost Noel Hickey and JJ Delaney in 1 year, I think that would hurt us severely. Them, it was just seamless. And the fact that their average age of their team has got younger, which ours was going the other way, it's scary when you actually look at the hard facts underneath the 4 All-Irelands that they've won. you know, so when you kind of compare those things, they have it in their hands as regards the fundamentals and the ability to win it. Whether they can actually manage what goes in between their 2 years between now and the All-Ireland final, we'll just have to wait and see, and that's the great thing about it.
Yeah, time will tell. Would you go along with everything Jackie says there, Seamus?
I would actually, yeah. It's going to be hard for them. I think they have been beaten twice in the league, which is the first time in a few years that they've been beaten at all. And that can do a good thing as well, because it can open the rise. And there is teams out there, and as Jackie knows, and we all know, there's a lot of football to be played before now on next August. And teams are going to be getting better. Kerry have beaten them. Kerry are on the move again. Mayo haven't gone away. There's a few good teams around. They're not in Leinster, of course. With Leinster, it's the standard in Leinster at the moment are on their own, really. Maybe Kildare might be able to do something. Hopefully someone will do it. But I think as they get nearer to the All-Ireland final, it's going to be... and it's very hard to get out of your head, really. It's because, as you said, Jackie, it's going to be talked. It's going to be every GA man will be talking about the 5 in a row. The only thing I'd say against... when Dublin want to win matches, and this includes this team, they still go back for the old tried and trusted, like Kevin McMenamin, and they're going to do well, and they're a long time around.
That the youth have yet to be a game changer.
I'd like to see them in a real pressure game.
Okay.
Some of them, I'm not saying a lot of them have come through it and proven themselves, but there's some new lads on it, and it's there's an awful difference when you're winning every game and then someone has it put up to you and your back's to the wall to win it. It's a different job.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say at the very start, though, isn't it, about the idea that you weren't even thinking about the 5 in a row, because it's one thing actually being able to go toe-to-toe with Dublin, and then suddenly you're level pegging going down the home stretch in an All-Ireland final, and you're the team to stop the 5 in a row. There's a huge pressure in that as well.
Yeah. Of course, yeah, that's true, yeah.
It's actually, when you mentioned, I was actually kind of expecting you to say that you weren't thinking about the 5 in a row, because there's some amazing, I'm not sure if they're myths or not, about that team in 1982 going into the thing. Just like reading today about like the night before the final, was it true that you were drinking brandy the night before the 83 final?
I wasn't drinking brandy. I had a couple, yeah. But I mean, it was
Many
really,
was a couple, Shane.
I had a layer, Jackie.
We leave it at a couple.
No, I had a couple of brandies with my brother-in-law as a Lord of Mercy at the time, and it was just really, I was wound up, and at that stage I would have been used to having a few drinks up and down, and I just thought, it was better to go home and sleep than to be at home lying awake all night and then want to sleep when it's time to get up. Yeah. So I wound up good anyway, but...
it didn't do you any harm.
It didn't do me any harm, but if I'd hit the corner flag, I'd hear more about it now, I'd imagine. I'll tell you a funny story about that. Now, we got off the bus going into Crow Park that day, and this woman selling 5 in a row scarves comes over to Richie Connor. He was the captain of the team. Would you buy a 5 in a row scarf? And Richie, being Richie, said, no, not yet. Now, she hadn't a clue she was talking. But,
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like the other thing that was said as well about the final was that you spoke to a local curate or a priest who predicted exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah.
What happened there?
I didn't exactly predict it, but he's regarded in our part of the world as he was a saint. He cured so many people, and he just, if he told you something's going to happen, that would happen. And I rang him. He used to be the chairman of the county board. Father McWee, he's dead and gone now, and I would have known him. He would have carried me around in the car from the time I was a Gosso, and I just told him to just, he always remembered the team at Mass anyway, and I said, just remember me, just in case. He said, no, you'll be on, Seamus, and you'll score a goal or two. That's what he said. They're exactly his words now, but I mean...
Did you meet him afterwards, or did he never say
I would have met him afterwards. He wouldn't even think of that.
Would he not?
No, he wouldn't be that kind of a man, no.
Yeah. And he was clearly right. You were like, what did you think when he said it to you in the first place? I suppose you thought you had a fair chance.
When this man, if someone was sick and he was noted down around Edenderry and Road and Carberry, around that area, like that if he said to you, there won't be a bother on them, you can take it. There will be, but if he didn't say them words, you can take it. That's over.
Yeah,
that was the way it was, and his regards of saying, really, you know.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing I just wanted to touch on, you've kind of touched on it already, Jackie, is kind of your relationship with the team that you played in those iconic finals. It's very famously a big relationship between Kilkenny and Tipperary down through the years, but your relationship with Kerry is very interesting, as in everybody down in Kerry seems to love you. Everybody down there speaks fondly of you, in kind of in a hindsight sort of way. In terms of, like, I was listening to an interview you did on Radio Kerry years ago, and there's kind of your legend has carried down to Kerry as well. And I think, were you even down in Kerry in 1981 in the summer watching them train? That you were kind of close to the camp. You knew all about that team basically.
I was actually. I was down on holidays in Kerry, and I went to see them train in 1981. Yeah, that's true. I was down hanging around, and I was with my wife at the time, and we went in to see them train in Tralee. No one knew me, or there was no big deal about it.
If only they knew then.
Well, only any of us knew then, I suppose. But,
did you pick up anything from the train, and did you see anything? Or?
Yeah, I just saw a couple of things, Jack.
Yeah. Did you see where the keeper stood in the corner that was open?
No, it's just interesting to see them train, and that's all. I never expected to be back playing with Offaly in my wildest dreams, really, at that stage, you know. But I get on very well with most of the Kerry lads, as it happens. Now, I'm not saying I'm as popular as you said, but I get on very well with them, really, you know, and that's grand as well. I meet them here and there, and they're all nice lads, you know.
And what about yourselves and Tip?
Yeah, sure. I suppose it's the classic Kilkenny Tip rivalry. It's intense. It's you know, we wouldn't be mad about each other, but then only at the Amanda Stapleton charity game that we played recently, we all, you know, as soon as any Kilkenny lads were asked, you know, a great cause like that, jumped at it. We went up. They looked after us unbelievably well afterwards. We're on the marquee, bit of grub, right few pints, right bit of crack, and good bit of slagging. And they had, like, there was players there as new as current tip players like Dan McCormick, and then you had Michael Webster, who we would have played with down through the years. And I think at the end of it, like, when you see things like that, it humbles you and it brings you back to it's a game, and there's more to life than it. I mean, particularly when you come out of the intense bubble of inter-county hurling or football, you kind of see that there is more to life, and when humbling experiences like that, and it was an honour to be asked and to go up there, and obviously Shane and Paddy who played for Tipperary for so long. So, you know, it is when we do meet each other, it is intense and it is tough, but we know that there's a bigger picture outside of it.
Yeah, that's class. Just one final point then, I guess. We've obviously discussed about the current empire that we're seeing in football. We're obviously, I suppose, a few years out from your empire that you created in hurling, and the hurling championships over the last couple of years have been so cracking because you don't know which way it's going to go from a certain point of the season. Do you think that's going to be the case for the next decade or so, or can you see another back-to-back or even a 3 in a row happening anytime soon?
I would say it's going to be an awful lot harder to even do back-to-back. And you would look at that Galway team going, they have everything. They have the physicality, they have the players, they had a decent squad. It probably came at them in the end, but it's going to be a lot harder. I don't see any team coming up and dominating for 2-3 years or a spell. It's too professional. Teams are being analysed so much. The game has just gone to such a level. They would want to be an absolutely unbelievably team, and everything has to be going right. You have to have an unbelievable manager. You have to have a really, really core group of players that drive that panel on, and we were lucky that we had that. And you need to have a couple of minors or under 21s winning, just feeding into that all the time, and that's what we had. We used to get 2 or 3 players every year, and that's a lot of boxes to tick. I don't see that there at the minute, and I don't see it for the next 10 years. I think it's going to be open. I think it's just going to be different teams winning it every year.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way, and it's going to be a great old year of hurling ahead, no doubt. Jackie and Seamus, thanks a million for popping in, and as I say, Laker Gale, another season is coming your way, and both of these lads have a full hour-long special coming your way, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, indeed. Keep an eye out tomorrow night on TG Gar. Jackie Tyrell kicks off the new series at 9:30. We wanted to talk about one of the big hurling results at the weekend. Dermot Lyng was on co-commentary duty on TG Gar as well for the Wexford Tip game. It's fair to say it was a bit of a roller coaster. Certainly the quality of hurling in the first half didn't make us think that the second half was going to be quite as exciting as it was. Gizzy, good morning to you. How you doing?
How are you doing? How are you, Johnny?
How are you, Gizzy?
Very good.
A weird old game in that, like, I'd say Wexford were quite worried at various stages, including deep in the second half, and yet they managed to dig it out. So after a match like that, what's your assessment of where the team are? I know it's kind of still very early in the season, given that it's only February.
I think that what I was left with, Ger, was the last play. D. O'Keefe had been, I felt, struggling in midfield with the physicality that Tipperary were bringing between the 245s. All the players from both teams, bar maybe two and sweeper inside, were left, and a huge amount of the play was between the 245s and 65s. And Tipperary were really up for the physical challenge of that. The hurling wasn't where it needed to be, definitely, and so the standard was a little bit off. But at the end of it, having gone through so many tackles from plenty of big men and not quite breaking the line, D. O'Keefe managed to settle himself and have the composure to spot Lee Chin across the field. Overcooked the pass a little bit, but that even still, that was putting Lee in command because he was in front of the ball and he could control what he was going to do with it then, because the Tipperary, I don't know who it was, Seamus Kennedy was inside him, so the ball was on the outside of him. And then I thought he had to just go back to Paddy Foley, who had the kind of quarterback look up the field, that extra pass that creates the space to give the right ball up. And instead, he put a kind of a diagonal inside ball. It's a dangerous ball in the last minute like that, and I thought that's the little bit of courage that you need. And then we're looking probably for a little while at players who can stand up in that moment and decide, okay, this is it. And Aidan Nolan had Conor MacDonald inside him, and once there's an option, you're kind of uncertain in your play, or you're uncertain in your mind if you're not very strong in your mind. And he had the strength of mind at the time to just go for it. So I was left with that. I said, okay, this is an improvement. This is somewhere that this is a good sign for February to take that level of physicality for so long and to come through it.
Yeah, okay. So why were they 8 points down at one stage though? So that's how they managed to dig themselves out, because they've been slight slow starters in various matches, which might be a bit of an issue in the long run.
Yeah, it's a big issue, and Jeannie Mac, they're by no means a finished article. As you said, the first half was pedestrian, it was open. Looking at the Cork game the week before, again, very pedestrian, very open. Everybody was kind of doing what they wanted to do. Limerick as well, it was a little bit better, but the standard was way down. So how they got there, how they ended up 8 points down, is they weren't good enough. They weren't able for Tipperary in midfield. They weren't able for the physicality. They weren't able for the pace of breaking through tackles. I think until Lee Chin and probably Rory O'Connor came on, who have that little bit of force in breaking through a tackle, the athleticism and the smartness to break tackles. I think when they came on, that helped. Primarily D. O'Keefe. I thought Lee Moog was out in midfield, Ian Byrne, Aidan Nolan. Yeah, they just weren't getting through. And this time of year, Tipperary were definitely focused and are focused on the physicality. I was chatting to somebody on their backroom team after the game, and he was saying all the focus at the moment is on S&C. And you know how it is, Ger. FYI, the T&Cs at the gym at this point in time are no hurls allowed, and so it's just all physicality for Tipperary at the moment, and it seemed like that was really what they were going for. And Noel McGrath's 2 tackles kind of indicated that, just a little bit early in the year, a little bit not quite having the timing right, and he paid the price for it. But I think it was the physicality we probably struggled with most. Yeah,
the sending off obviously does have an impact in the game, because Wexford obviously still have, at the moment anyway, are persisting with a sweeper system. So that's grand. It's actually great when you're playing against 14 men, because you seem to have a free man. And in fairness, it looked like they were playing the free man as a forward later on in the second half. Certainly the goal that they scored to get themselves back into the game, there was a free man running in the inside forward line. So it wasn't like they were sitting back with the extra man.
I mean, I don't know about this. This is the biggest criticism of David Fitzgerald's reign from within Wexford, definitely. It's like when they're behind, they can't get back because you've got this defensive system, you've got somebody pull back. Now, I thought Kevin Foley, he really has the look of a fella who knows what he's doing in the sweeper role. His footwork is fantastic and he's breaking out through very effectively. And he also has a bit of smart, and he's a bit of a live wire. Like, he'll do his own thing a little bit, and I think that's what creates that. It's not that they're pushing forward so much, it's just that they choose the right time to go forward and create an overlap. So he's pushing up, Paddy Foley is pushing up. We saw him breaking through a couple of minutes later, then he missed his pass into Seamus Gizzy, but creating that overlap and being more attacking. But when it's against 14 men, that's what the sweeper suits. Like, it suits when you can do that. But when it's 15 on 15, I thought at the other end you've got Pádraig Maher as the sweeper, and that suited Wexford down to the ground, because for me Pádraig Maher is like the enforcer. Like, he's the guy who, deep in the minds of the Wexford forwards, is like, if I get caught a little bit in possession here or whatever, I could be killed by Pádraig Maher. Like, that's the force that he brings, and he sets that tone. And when you're a sweeper, you're looking at the flow of the play, you're looking at filling in gaps, you're looking at support play, you're looking at timing, and they're all things that kind of disconnect you from that more of a, well, I'm marking, he'd love to be marking, you know, Conor McDonald, like, give me the challenge, give me Leach in and let me enforce the Tipperary will on the game. So I thought that Wexford got that one right in who it was, and Kevin Foley used the ball really well throughout. And again, though, this is it. It's like, yeah, okay, we won and we clawed back that's a huge deficit. But the main criticism before now with David Fitzgerald's system of a sweeper is that when a team gets ahead, you don't really get back. Maybe unless it's 14 men.
There is a view out there that Davy has a shelf life, and that the third year is that shelf life. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think that, like, on a case-by-case basis, and it shouldn't always be the case, that there might be some teams where that was exactly what happened, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't learned, that doesn't mean he can't change, that doesn't mean that actually the third year might be the year that the Wexford hurlers decide, yeah, we get everything now, we fully understand it.
Yeah, like, I suppose in some senses it's for the commentary, and you can only look back at what you've seen to decide what's going to happen in the future. And so you say with Clare, you know, you're looking back at his Waterford reign, and then with Wexford you're looking back at his Clare reign. Like, the people in Wexford, the people who go to games a little bit more infrequently, who get caught up in something like the Davy Fitzgerald effect, just think Davy is great. But the people in the county who are really following the game and really looking for progress are concerned, I think, that this 2 to 3 year shelf life is there, and the same voice, the same kind of that fight, you know, that trench warfare type mentality, that you just get tired of that after a couple of years. You can't listen to any more of it. But as you said, that totally disallows any possibility that David Fitzgerald has learned anything by his experiences with there, and learned anything by his experience with Waterford and what he's done in colleges and everything else. Of course he has, of course he can, and of course he's developing as well. I suppose it's kind of a measure, isn't it, in sport in general, where if you get too besotted with your own celebrity and your own self, then you don't learn those lessons as much, because you think everything's just kind of moving along fine because you have a certain amount of success and people are happy with you and everything else. But when you're really looking for the harsh lessons to try and find those extra few inches, I think you have to be learning. And I'm assuming he can. Talking to the lads, when I talk to any of the lads within the panel, it's not so much anymore because I'm not based in Wexford, obviously. But when I do, they're delighted with how things are going. They're delighted with what he's brought. They're delighted with professionalism. They're delighted with Davy himself. They're delighted with the buzz. They're talking about a really strong buzz amongst themselves. I don't always see it on the field. You're looking for signs of it. I don't always see it on the field, but at the same time, yeah, we've beaten Tipperary in the league. Like, we've made steps forward. Wexford have definitely come on a huge amount. So yeah, you'd have to be open to the possibilities.
Okay, one quick question on Tip there, where you talk about the physicality. It is February, and you can totally understand why a team would, with the gifted hurlers that Tipperary have, would focus on that to make sure that they put that bed down for the rest of the year. At the same time, you'd like to see them ahead of everybody else when it comes to their stick work, because ultimately that might be the thing which gets them out of tight corners later in the summer.
It's a really interesting one, Ger, because I think that you've got Liam Sheedy. So one of the things I find about Tipperary is that they're almost like, and I know that the Tip lads won't like this, but I think it's the ultimate compliment in a sense as well, is that they're like a dysfunctional Kilkenny, in that, you know, if Wexford if they found the locus of their power, their energy, they're really pure stuff that we found, you know, that we find every 25 years, realistically, we get the most out of ourselves, and we would win over the 20-year period. The Kilkenny won, 10 or 12 All-Irelands. Wexford might win 3 or 4 if we found that spirit that Brian Cawley talks about every year. The rest of the counties, Galway, you know, they might win 6 or 7. Cork might win 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 as well. Limerick, again, 3 or 4. Clare, similar. But Tipperary would win 10 or 11. Tipperary would do the very same as Kilkenny if they got that they found that kind of spirit and had and could protect that and keep it right the way Kilkenny did and had all that dominance. So they've gone now to Liam Sheedy because he's someone who knows the direct line to that. He knows what that is. But with that direct line now, because the game has changed so much in the 9 years in terms of tactics, in terms of how you deal with young people, how to bring people with you, the way to do it, how you navigate that journey to get to that place that he knows what is there, but how to get there has changed. And that's what Liam Sheedy, that's what's in front of him. Focusing on strength and condition at the moment and the physicality, like you could see that very clearly in their play, because he's trying to find that locus of their energy, that real pure good stuff that's in Tipperary hurling when they get their stuff together, because with the standard of players, like you know that it's there. So he's trying to find that now, and I think leave the hurls down for maybe a little while and not focus on that as much. But yeah, that can be a dangerous game too if you don't find what you're looking for.
Gizzy, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million, man.
Good stuff, Jar.
It's Darren Lyng giving us some thoughts on...
Only Gizzy could wear like a polo neck inside a shirt.
Get away with
a
it.
woolly polo neck. What a man, yeah. Speaks well about hurling, and I think it's fair to say, like, this Davy thing being, kind of pigeonholed as a lad who kind of roars at you for 3 years is a bit harsh, because he is an innovator in terms of hurling, and you're looking at resources. Davy's doing a very good job with Wexford. Like, it's just, I was speaking to one of the players a few weeks ago, and there is a kind of a sense that this is kind of their chance this year, that it's going to be more difficult as they get on, and Leinster does afford Wexford a fair chance. It's like a bit like the Super 8. You need to get into Super 8s in football. In hurling, to like, as much as we were talking about earlier, as impressive as Limerick were yesterday, there's no guarantee Limerick will get out of Munster at all. It's so competitive. Whereas in Leinster, you're looking at it being much more realistic for those teams to get out, and it'll be fascinating to see how it goes. I'm watching the hurling at the moment. You just could not be buzzing for the campaign ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Uli Hesse was on last night talking to the lads about Jurgen Klopp and making the case that Klopp wasn't that missed by people in Germany when he left for Liverpool.
Yes, I mean, his coaching talents were always respected. I mean, and in Dortmund, of course, I keep saying that during his press conference where he announced that he would step down at the end of the season, I was receiving text messages from people saying, I already missed the guy. So in Dortmund, it was always, he's... but most of the rest of the country, to tell the truth, had grown a bit tired of his antics,
right.
And he seems to have toned down on that. He's no longer quite as manic.
This is the toned down version, is it?
Yeah, this is the toned down version. Yeah, you should look up some footage on YouTube. It was much worse. He himself says so. I mean, I met him a couple of months ago when he said that, contrary to popular opinion and expectation, he had somehow grown up.
So what's your expectation then tomorrow night?
I don't expect a goal fest. I expect a close and tense game, and I think Liverpool will edge it 1-0.
Yeah, okay, so that's the prediction from Uli Hesse. Liverpool going to edge it 1-0.
This cannot happen, surely. With the Bayern defence, I was reading the Racing Post this morning, they've conceded 3 times in 4 Bundesliga games, shipped 3 at Ajax, obviously in the draw on the Champions League stage. Liverpool's defence is clearly going to be pretty makeshift tonight, and it wouldn't be that great at the back either. There have to be goals, surely.
Like a 3-3 draw kind of thing?
I could certainly see it being something like 3-1 to Liverpool, maybe. They've obviously drifted in the betting with the view that Van Dijk's not playing, and I don't think Liverpool have been all that convincing the last sort of 5 or 6 games. You look at Bayern and you're kind of saying, where's German football at the moment? Obviously the Dortmund result wouldn't encourage you, and as well as that, they've been behind Dortmund this season. They don't really have an awful lot of star names in their team. I think Liverpool will be confident, but there have to be goals. Liverpool are going to go fairly gung-ho, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, this is their chance to, before an expectant Anfield, to stick something on Bayern. I don't know, Firmino has a virus, might not play. If he does play, he's going to be a weakened version of himself. And he's very important to them. Like
he definitely is. But even if, we'll say, if Shaqiri comes in, you've Salah, Mane, Shaqiri.
I just feel like, so Salah's obviously world class, but having Firmino as a foil is very important to him.
100%.
It creates a lot of space and a lot of opportunity for him. Simon Hughes, football writer, obviously covers Liverpool is on the line with us this morning. Simon, a wide range of predictions when it comes to what might happen tonight. In terms of what specific approach Liverpool are going to take to it, they really have an opportunity here to take a significant lead into the second leg. Bayern aren't great at the moment.
Yeah, I think defensively, that's the problem for Bayern, and equally that's Liverpool's strength. But on the flip side of that, I think Bayern, still going forward, they've still got the players that can hurt Liverpool, and equally Liverpool's defence is weakened by 3 key absences. So I can see it being a very open game. Quite often, sometimes when the context is around the attack, it becomes quite a defensive game for whatever reason. I think whatever happens, I do think that there will be goals, though. I just can't see Bayern keeping Liverpool out. They tend to play quite a high line, I believe, and that's the sort of thing that plays into Liverpool's hands. Meanwhile, Robert Lewandowski is getting a lot of criticism in Germany at the moment for his performances, but he keeps still scoring goals. So I don't know what that says about the quality of the player, to be honest. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a very open game, and it's not in Liverpool's nature, particularly in a European match at Anfield, to just sort of try and soak up the pressure and steal a 1-0 win like maybe it was 10-15 years ago. I can see Liverpool really going at Bayern in the first sort of half an hour and seeing what they can do. But it does seem to me that there's this sort of assumption that Liverpool are going to beat Bayern. I just think that they're a very experienced team in Europe. They're still second in the Bundesliga, and as Jurgen Klopp said yesterday, that the sort of the league form places an extra emphasis on the European campaign, I think, and it brings an extra focus. So they're going to be very determined to beat Liverpool. Yeah,
what's the story with Firmino? Is he likely to start? How fit is he going to be? How strong is he going to be?
Yeah, well, obviously this obviously news emerged yesterday. It seems to be when Liverpool go away, they spend a lot of time on planes and getting illnesses, and it's happened a couple of times this season already. But I'd be surprised if Firmino didn't play. He's not the sort of character to sort of miss a game of this importance because of illness. I do wonder as well. There's obviously a lot of kidology that happens in football, and I think Bayern will know Firmino's significance to the Liverpool team in terms of how they play. So part of me does wonder whether there's a little bit of gamesmanship going on. Obviously, he didn't train yesterday, but otherwise, I think he's trained all week.
We talked a little bit there about Virgil van Dijk, obviously out for this game. Van Dijk is the one player that the Liverpool fans have really focused on. If he's gone, then, the league title race. If he was to get injured, for example, for a month, then I think most Liverpool fans would go into a severe panic. It wouldn't be a mild panic. So let's see what happens tonight when he's not there, because he has been a calming influence on the midfield and on the goalkeeper and on everybody who's around him. He's been genuinely world-class all season.
Well, I go along with that. I think he is the most important player. I think if he did get injured, I'd find it hard to see how Liverpool did win the league, really, because bearing in mind Joe Gomez's injury, I don't think he's going to be back anytime soon. I think it's going to be a bit longer than Liverpool expected, which is a bit of a blow. Dejan Lovren can't seem to stay fit. He's had problems all season, really, since he's come back from the World Cup. Meanwhile, Joel Matip isn't a defender that you'd necessarily hang your hat on, throughout the course of a very important part of the campaign. He's had his injury problems as well. So they do need Van Dijk to be available. In terms of, tonight, I do think it's quite easy to forget some small details. Last season when Liverpool beat Manchester City at home and became the first team to beat them in the Premier League season, Van Dijk didn't play. He pulled up late and was out of the team. So, they can, in these big games, sort of rise to it, and the adrenaline takes the players over the line. And what Liverpool like when they sort of get that momentum in a game, they're very difficult to stop. So I would imagine they'd be looking, as I said before, to start really fast. So the sort of the idea of Van Dijk not being there doesn't become an issue that manifests in either the crowd's minds or certainly the players' minds.
It could be a big night for Naby Keita as well, because I think, Simon, his season's been if you were to give him your teacher score, it might be sort of a B minus, maybe a C plus, something like that. I'd imagine he will play tonight, and I would say, Simon, that it's kind of one of those nights where he could maybe win the Liverpool fans over a bit, because I would argue that he probably hasn't quite at this stage.
I can definitely feel that, yeah. I think with Keita, you can see that there's a player there. Some of the stuff that he does, he's very... He sort of glides through the pitch when he's allowed to play. But, I think he has struggled with the physical side of the Premier League, which has surprised me, because when he came to Liverpool from Leipzig, he has a bit of a reputation as a bit of a hard case. And I don't know whether he's had to sort of rein that in because the sort of the Premier League referees on top of that sort of thing. I do think one of the problems that he's got is English. He hasn't really mastered English yet. And in the Liverpool squad, there's only really Sadio Mane, I think, that speaks French, and I don't think he's fully integrated into the squad. From what I'm told, although it's not a problem, but it's something that he probably needs to think about.
It probably is a problem, I guess, when you have to develop a harmony with your buddies as well.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that sort of, he's quite off the pitch. He's very reserved and quite quiet, actually. So that's something I think he has to sort of work on. There've been signs in the last couple of weeks, a few signs that that he was getting it together a bit. I think Jurgen Klopp spoke after the last game when I was there at Bournemouth about how he's been trying to play him into form by picking him, consistently. He hasn't really had a run of form, a run of games over the course of the season. I think before the last 4 games that he only had 3 games in succession, and I think being in and out the team hasn't helped. But less than a month and a half ago, we were talking about Fabinho. How does he fit in? The same thing happened last season with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. It happened with Andy Robertson, and then it was around this time of the season, to be honest, that they started to understand what was expected of them, of the manager. Jurgen did speak about his own expectations and demands as well, and there's a perception, I think, to see Jurgen Klopp as like sort of this, wholehearted, emotional figure, and he's quite calculated in terms of the, tactically, and the demands that he has of players. They're very specific, I think, and it takes a little while for players to adjust to that. So there's no doubt he has to pick up. Keita has to pick up and win the crowd over. I think part of the problem is he's not one who chases back all the time and reacts when there's trouble is brewing. He tends to sort of amble back, and that can create problems, certainly with the Liverpool crowd, because you want to see people run about and tackle hard.
I thought he was good against Bournemouth. I just want to ask you a bit of something you've been writing about yourself, is the explosion in popularity of Liverpool in Germany. It's fairly obvious when you have somebody as totemic as Jurgen Klopp, being as successful as he is, that there will be a natural interest in his homeland, but it turns out that interest is absolutely massive.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, since as soon as Jurgen Klopp came to Liverpool, you could see in Anfield more German football people, supporters in the ground. How they get tickets, I'm not sure, but they were there, and the interest is there naturally. I do think, Liverpool's got a natural association with Germany in terms of the history of the clubs. Liverpool beat Borussia Mönchengladbach in 73. They beat them again in 77. So there was always that sort of interest around Liverpool. Obviously, then they beat Bayern Munich in 81 and won a lot of popularity, I think, in Germany because of that victory. And yeah, they've had quite a few German players over the years that have done well for Liverpool. They have done really well. Marcus Babbel, Didi Hamann, been fantastic players for Liverpool. So yeah. I think there was that context behind it, but certainly since Jurgen Klopp's come as manager, he's so loved in Germany. Even the Bayern Munich fans, I think, really, really like him, despite what he said about the club in the past. They'd love to have him as manager. So it's no surprise, really, that they've sort of embraced Liverpool a little bit more. I do sense that tonight, if you're not a Bayern Munich fan, you will be wanting Liverpool to beat Bayern Munich in Germany.
Yeah, fair enough. Simon, great stuff. Thanks a million. Enjoy the game.
Thanks.
Simon Hughes there talking to us about Liverpool. That was Mats Hummels Thomas Muller, Robert Lewandowski and Manuel Neuer pretending to be the Beatles.
I was wondering who it was, actually. Yeah, it was hard to tell with the wigs.
At the training ground in Bayern, recreating the Abbey Road cover. On the front cover of Bild have run a 7-day daily series about what's happening at Liverpool, because maybe they want to try and get Jurgen Klopp back there, love bomb him.
Sounds like there is a lot of love bombing going on. They kind of need to win the league, though, don't they, for this Klopp-Liverpool story?
Do you think so? Is it not, like, have they not just made massive progress? Are they not
They
now?
have.
And with the money that they're making, they're established, so they'll actually be able to buy anybody and pay their players.
The money they're making, I was interested in reading on that. Obviously, it was mainly down to get to the Champions League final and Coutinho, but I think they made record Premier League profit in a season. Is that right?
100 million, which I think is potentially a record for a football club.
To be fair, I know we spoke about this in the League of Ireland and capitalism and making money, but that's actually that it's to be admired that you can be a club as big as Liverpool, pay very big wages and still be profitable, and because a lot of success has been achieved by certainly not being profitable, and I'd always have reservations about that. But in terms of Liverpool, the Champions League, you know from speaking to any Liverpool fan, as much of a buzz as they have tonight, this season will be kind of a failure for them unless they win the league, more so because of the fact that it's been so long rather than the fact that the Champions League is a secondary thing.
That is it. It's like, so I was at that Bournemouth game, and they're just nervous about the league games. Even when they're winning, they're like, "Can we really enjoy this? Because what happens next?" Yeah,
it's kind of like. It's kind of like being a Galway Hurling fan after they finally got over the line against Waterford. Last year it felt different. It was just like, well, we've won it now at least. This famine is over, and it's not like this. If you've year after year after year of disappointment, eventually you just want to get that out of your life. You know, and that's what the league is like to Liverpool. And
it's Mayo.
It's Mayo, albeit Mayo are still waiting for the saviour,
Well, they've got one now, I think. I think they're going to be all right. We brought you a very special golf broadcast at the weekend for the Saturday panel. Porrick Harrington, Damien McGrain and Peter Lowry sat down together with Nathan. Here's Porrick on the importance of attitude and when it comes up to facing against Tiger Woods.
Ultimately, you tend to put people up on that pedestal, and then you tend to really drag yourself down a bit. If you play your game, it's a little bit better than you think, and everybody else's game is not quite as good as what you think. So, for example, in the 10 years, I think, say up to 2008 with Tiger Woods, I'm the only player who played with Tiger more than 10 times and has a better strokes record in those rounds. And the reason being is Tiger's better than me. But if I play my game, Tiger should win 60% of the time and me 40% of the time. But the reality is Tiger's not used to, it's a bit like, playing against Damien McGrain. Tiger's not used to people hanging around. He's used to people shooting themselves in the foot and actually destroying their own game, and Tiger then moves away and it's easy. You hang in there with somebody who's better than you and make them beat you. They have to play golf to beat you, and they're not used to that, and it comes down right down to the end, right to the stretch. And the reality of with golf, it can swing either way down the last couple of holes.
Today's show is definitely brought to you by a series of wild, unkempt beards. Oh, Darren's back. You're not unkempt.
Whose joke was that?
Tommy's.
Yeah.
It's a very well manicured beard.
He tried it outside and he got no reaction, so I'm surprised he persisted.
Well, he had another qualifier. Another adjective.
Oh?
Wild ginger beards, he said. The third on the show today. But Porrick Harrington also rocking the beard.
That's the second time the fact that my beard is ginger was brought up on this show. I was on the crappy quiz on Friday, and Nathan pointed out the fact that Owen now has a beard.
This is a big departure, the Owen beard.
Yeah, the Owen beard is big. The onset of puberty.
Well, it's not big. It's not big.
Big news for him.
He does make him look at least 2 months older, though.
Yeah.
He looks about 17.
He could pass for 18 now.
Yeah.
He might get served.
Yeah.
I said the other day, I kind of wish my beard wasn't ginger, but I'm not sure why it's not the same colour as my hair.
You got to embrace these things, right?
Gizzy Lyng's beard, there's nothing wrong with that, is there?
Very impressive beard.
Oh, hang on, that's 4 then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Simon.
Gizzy.
Porrick Harrington.
Owen Sheehan. And 5 now.
Yeah.
Anyway. I don't think I'm going to qualify for the Beard Champions League. I think I'm just outside, behind all those people.
Yeah, we just need Adrian Barry's growing.
When I was in Iran a few years ago, I was told, you should probably trim that beard. They don't like beards over there because they think you're one of the establishment mullahs, kind of, and it's not cool at all in Iran for people to have beards.
Oh, really?
Whereas in the Western world, we don't have...
They actually said trim it like they were...
Oh, they were like, just should probably cut it, like, because, no, it's not...
Clean shaven?
Yeah. It's like most people, it wouldn't be considered cool at all to have a beard over there because it's seen as like a kind of a sop to the... theocratic regime over there, in which they obviously all have beards, so we don't have those concerns in Ireland.
How was Iran, Johnny?
A great place, yeah. I was over there twice. The second time, you could notice there was a massive difference because WhatsApp had come in and you could send emails and your phone worked. And it was kind of globalisation is obviously great, but it was kind of sad to see that you couldn't cut yourself off as much as you could. And really interesting place. A huge young community who are very frustrated by life. I think it was 40 years since the revolution last week, and basically it's a failed system over there because it's the regime doesn't really fit the narrative of young people anymore. They have a massive young population who kind of can't get out of the country but can't get jobs over there, and obviously international sanctions mean that it's not a particularly well-off country, even though it has abundant resources, but really interesting place, and desperately polluted as well. Desperately polluted.
Really, yeah.
So unhealthy to live there. Like you can feel it in the street. You walk.
How long were you there for?
A week each time. So I befriended a couple of lads just randomly there the first time, and then I came back to meet them again. And one of them wants to move to Ireland because he's on $200 a month working as a very well-educated lecturer in a college, and that doesn't get you very far even in Iran. So he'd love to move to Ireland, but it's a really interesting place and incredibly friendly people. You know, the Western sort of image of them is totally wrong.
Right, that's mad.
Yeah, and it's really cheap to go over there. So it's $300, €300 return flight, something like that.
From London?
You can go via, probably Istanbul would be the best option. You can go via London, but it's a place, if you wanted to go somewhere that's a little bit out there, I would strongly recommend it. And it's also, as well as the sites, like I always find holidays are about meeting people, and in Iran you'll meet incredibly fascinating people, and they still embrace tourists because they don't get that many, and we all know if you go to a touristy place, the locals aren't that friendly because it's just like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, I'm fed up
like
with
Dublin.
tourists.
Yeah.
I still think Dublin's very friendly.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know if Dublin's friendly.
Do you reckon?
I think America's much friendlier than Dublin. I think we have this kind of misguided reputation that we're real nice and friendly. We kind of rip off tourists.
We gouge them.
Yeah.
We kind of is putting it mildly.
Yeah, I think I'm being kind to us.
But the 100,000 welcomes thing, that was based on us being an impoverished third world country that welcomed tourists, but that's gone. Everyone's on their phone now like everywhere else, you know, so basically I think we're gone past that 100,000 welcomes nonsense.
I'm mildly hostile towards tourists.
Mildly hostile?
Mildly hostile. Like, I saw a group
of... job in Falls Air and there.
No, I wouldn't get a job. I saw a group of Spanish students getting on a bus one time. You know, when they come...
Are you sure they were Spanish?
Well,
we always
assumed that they had the backpacks and they all matched. But because I knew the bus would be unbearable for the next 20 minutes, I just waited on the next one. Then I realised that's a really bad thing to do. I'm going to inconvenience myself because I don't want to share the bus ride with
That just means you're a misanthrope, not that it's all human beings, not just tourists that you hate.
Probably,
generally.
yeah.
I do like the way 67 Spanish kids though just stand in a narrow pavement and think it's fine. You know, and kind of.
That's where the hostility comes from.
To get to work.
Look, we've unleashed Statler and Waldorf here this morning.
Anyway,
where are we going, Darren?
The Champions League. Liverpool and Bayern Munich meet in the last 16 of the competition at Anfield tonight. The teams have each won the title 5 times. Liverpool's last triumph came in 2005, but they made it to the final last year. It wasn't to be for them. Bayern's most recent success in 2013. Fabinho could be the solution to the Reds' defensive crisis tonight. Virgil van Dijk is suspended. Dejan Lovren is doubtful. Jurgen Klopp has to decide who will partner Joel Matip at centre-back. Xherdan Shaqiri faces a late fitness test, and he is a doubt to face his former club. Bayern will be without centre-back Jerome Boateng after he was ruled out with a stomach bug. Thomas Muller serves the first of a 2-game suspension, and Jurgen Klopp is hoping Liverpool can make the most of the Anfield advantage.
To become the champion, you need to have the desire, like you need to have the desire of a newcomer, combined with the quality of a real contender. And in the beginning of the season, maybe after being 6 years champion, they didn't have that. But meanwhile, they are chasing the league, and so they have it back. So all the situation in Munich, from my point of view, makes them even more dangerous, more a threat than they were before. It will be outstanding tomorrow night, and I know that a lot of players from other teams always say, "Oh no, it's really good. I'm looking forward to be going there." And it's true. It's something to enjoy. But on the other hand side, there's a lot of power involved in that, and I've experienced it now a couple of times, that our crowd is really able to push us from 100 to 120, 30 or 40%. I never would have thought that that's possible, but it happened here from time to time, and hopefully tomorrow night again.
Now, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer reckons Paul Pogba showed why he is one of the best players in the world. Pogba scored one and set up the other as United eliminate the FA Cup holders Chelsea 2-0 at Stamford Bridge on Monday. After delivering the cross for Ander Herrera's 31st minute header, Pogba headed in a goal of his own on the stroke of half-time. It gave United their first win away at Chelsea since 2012. The Frenchman has been directly involved in 15 goals. He scored 9 and 6 assists since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer replaced Jose Mourinho in December, and the caretaker boss could not be happier.
We had a plan and it worked really well. You know, Rashi and Rom a bit wider, one in the middle doing a fantastic job for us defensively. I think he's one of the more cleverer players, and Ander and Paul with their energy was of course very important. He's one of the best attacking midfielders in the world. You know, he's got vision, he's got the clear view of, so the pass, the cross for Anders, goal, fantastic. Then again, he plays it out to Marcus. Then the way he makes up ground and gets into the box, fantastic.
Now, Maurizio Sarri says he's not worried about the Boo Boys just yet. Last night marked Chelsea's third defeat in 5 matches across all competitions, heaping even more pressure on the Italian. But the Blues boss says he's not worried about fan opinions or being under pressure. It's just the results that concern him.
Also, the Manchester City play also in the same way. But he is at the top of the table, I think. This is not a problem. I am worried about the results, not about the fans. The result wasn't really good. We are out of the FA Cup, and so I can understand very well our fans, but I am worried at the moment about our results.
Isn't it insane how things can change so quickly? Where Sarri was hailed earlier in the season for his innovative possession ball and coming out from the back, and everyone was saying, I really love the way he's changed, the way we look at things. And then it seemed like within a few weeks, you know, Hazard didn't like him and the fans are on his back, and the season is almost half derailing on him.
He's getting sacked.
Is he going to get sacked?
Well, they're 6th at the minute. They're only a point behind Man United in 4th, so I think
they need top 4.
It's the capitulation of it. It's the fact that they started well and then something turned, something changed.
They didn't really have a striker all season. They may have been just getting away with it because Hazard was playing that well. But I hate this notion that you can just, like, all of a sudden sack Sarri, like, 7 months into the season or whatever. To me, a manager needs at least 2 seasons to put his, you know, but maybe it's a fickle game. Yeah,
the worst thing about Chelsea is they've demonstrable results of sacking managers and it improving fortunes, at least in the short term.
But the short term, that does happen. But people are so, like Martin Keown last night.
They won the Champions League with an interim manager.
Yeah, Martin Keown was saying last night that, you know, if Man United win tonight, Solskjaer should get the job tonight. I'm like, why? I mean, you know, we're basing this on 10 games in which they've gotten some good results against Chelsea and Arsenal, but he's
a man prone to wild overstatement. I think that they want to give the job to Solskjaer. He just needs to finish in the top 4 and they'll be absolutely thrilled to give it to him. And they're clearly putting the stuff in place now to give him the job, while at the same time keeping their options open if they could possibly crowbar Pochettino away.
If it were a choice between Pochettino and Solskjaer, this is a complete no-brainer. Solskjaer's relevance because he played for Man United, to me, it's flimsy. Really?
He is doing a good job.
He's doing a good job, definitely doing a good job in a short space of time, but he's better judged on what he did before this, because you can't really judge somebody on a post-horrible Mourinho reign 10 games.
So you think there's just a honeymoon period and that
there's
most
definitely
managers...
a honeymoon period, yeah. Now, I'd completely absolve him of blame against PSG because I think they were beaten by a very good side.
But that's the only time they've been outplayed, and they have played decent sides.
But you can't really, like, you have to look at how does Solskjaer rate against Pochettino. There's no comparison.
He's beaten Pochettino so far. He's beaten Pochettino.
I know.
In a game where arguably you could say his tactics were spot on.
Yeah, again, it's one game, and I just wonder why, you know, Solskjaer, having been a sort of a Man United legend, how much really does that have to do with taking them forward as a club? And what are his tactical, you know, bits of genius other than that? Pochettino is clearly established himself as a brilliant manager.
I think being a legend doesn't matter, but being able to tap into what makes the club is important. So Klopp comes and has no connection to Liverpool, but immediately understands that Liverpool, the fans and the culture of the club is a team that's going to play good attacking football. And he doesn't try and turn them into a defensive powerhouse and play defensive Catenaccio style football. Now, that was his style always, so he wasn't going to... It was a perfect marriage of his style and what the ambitions of the club were. And I think that Solskjaer seems to have a sense that this is how he wants the team to play. And it's the right thing for Manchester United.
I totally agree with you on that, yeah. And even against PSG, and you could see that they were trying to play. And I think the fans would give him a huge break if they even started next season in a wobble, because he does want them to play. But again, that's kind of, most managers would be like that. It's again swap Mourinho, how bad that had become. But I find the whole narrative around Solskjaer very interesting. But I think Sarri needs time. I despair if he's sacked, even if it is Chelsea.
I do think, though, that the legend thing has way more bearing than you're putting on it, because
probably does.
For lads like Lingard and Rashford and even Pogba, who started his career in United, they would look up to him, they'd idolise him.
They worked with him. I think that matters. He was their reserve team coach. There's pictures of him in the dressing room teaching them how to play football. Like that's so he's not just a club legend. He actually served his time as a reserve manager there and went away and come back.
And he's demonstrated an ability to get the best out of them. Lads who were written off, lads who were seen as, I mean, we talked about the fact that it looked like Pogba was going to leave in January. Lads who it seemed had very little chance of having a future at the club, and he's brought the best out of him. The stats about Pogba since Mourinho left is insane. I'm not sure whether it's an indictment of how little Paul Pogba tried when Mourinho.
Well, it is 100%. Like Pogba threw in the towel in several games for Mourinho, and you could see his body language from the get-go was terrible. Anyway.
The Ireland squad are back on the training pitch in Maynooth later today as head of Sunday's Six Nations clash with Italy. Tyke Byrne could be back after returning from injury. Joe Schmidt may have to plan without Ian Henderson. The Ulster lock is set to appear before a disciplinary panel after being cited after an incident at the weekend. He played the full 80 minutes for Ulster in the Pro 14. Upon his return from a finger injury, he was cited after being involved in an attempted clear out of a ruck, which resulted in the referee awarding a penalty against him. The second row has been reported for alleged infringement of Law 9.11. Players must not do anything that is dangerous to others, which carries a minimum sanction of a 2-week suspension. In boxing, there are some concerns for the future of heavyweight division as the top stars are now divided by lucrative TV deals. Tyson Fury's proposed rematch with Deontay Wilder has been thrown into doubt after he signed a deal with ESPN that makes it exclusive broadcaster for his fights in the United States. Negotiations for a rematch following December's controversial draw in Los Angeles were reported to be at an advanced stage, but given Wilder has a deal with rival network Showtime, it appears unlikely that bout will go ahead. Anthony Joshua as well is on a completely different network, so all three of the top stars in the division, it seems, are unlikely to face each other.
Well, that's just bollocks. Like, the one thing that the heavyweight division had going for it was that we were going to get to see these three fighters fight each other, and now it's just bollocks.
Can you say that word on 9:36? Maybe you can, yeah.
You said it twice, I think.
Yeah. The watershed.
That's PM.
That'll work the other way. Right. That is... Yeah.
One final story to bring you as well. An Italian third division club that lost 20-0 on Sunday have been thrown out of the league. Pro Picanza's play in Serie C. Their players and coaching staff refused to travel for the game at Cuneo due to unpaid wages. The club could only field 7 players. 6 of them were teenagers from the academy, and a 39-year-old physio also played in the game. There you see the players on the screen.
That's a great picture.
After ruling on Monday that the players were not registered to actually play the game, the team were disqualified from the competition. It's not all bad news, though. As a result of a forfeit, they win 3-0 a walkover as opposed to the 20-0 defeat. So that's tried to readjust the goal difference in the league, which would cause complete chaos for everyone else. But officials also fined the club €20,000 and criticised the club's unacceptable behaviour and described the match as a farce and dangerous.
Finding a club who can't afford to pay wages, not the best and most progressive move, right?
It's mad. That would be the equivalent of, like, you know, League Two in England, and can you imagine that happening? Like, it's just insane. 7 players turn up, 6 of them. You know, I think an off the ball 11 would definitely not have lost that game 20-0. Genuinely,
Don't know,
we'd have parked the bus.
Kilban.
Yeah, well, we'd have Kilban.
Yourself?
We'd have Kilban. No, the young Enda can play a bit.
Enda can play a bit. Shane Hannon has demonstrated he can play football.
Yeah, he can. Nathan has a good beard. You know, no, I definitely think we would have lost 19-0 or less. You know, we would have done better than that. Anyway.
Could we organise that? Is it within the realms of possibility that we could go over and play that?
Anything is possible.
We can play those 7 lads.
No. Wow,
we beat those 7 lads.
Yeah.
And definitely beat those 7 lads.
And try to lose less than 20-0 for...
You're trying to sweet talk me now, by the way, after your disgraceful behaviour, giving me a really low rating for that indoor game.
The ratings were spread among 4 people. but I got all of the blame on it. I did not rate myself.
Accept the blame.
I thought I was at least a 6.
Yeah.
I was really harshly treated by my rating. Yours was a bit mean.
I thought you did well.
Yeah, I thought I did well too. The one-liner was pretty funny about you.
All right. What was the one-liner?
Something to do with horses.
Johnny had the engine of a horse and the touch of a horse.
I'm reeling since then, to be honest.
All right, that's all.
That wasn't mine.
That's all we've got time for this morning. If you missed any of this morning's show, you can listen back to the pod. Offtheball.com is the best place to get your pods at the moment. There's a few gremlins in the system heading over to iTunes. So if you're not seeing your stuff on iTunes or Pocket Casts or Spotify or wherever it is you get your podcasts, you can get everything at offtheball.com/podcast, so you can catch it back on YouTube. Today we had Daniel Harris on Stamford Bridge last night with Gizzy, Lyng and Wexford Hurling, our 5 in a row special with Jackie Tyrell and Seamus Darby. And we also spoke with Simon Hughes ahead of Bayern against Liverpool tonight. Plenty more for you across the day on offtheball.com as well. Tonight, live from 7 o'clock on Newstalk, interview with the Italy head coach Conor O'Shea. Stephanie Roach is going to be in studio. And if you can't wait for tonight's show, you can head over to our YouTube channel right now and check out last night's road show with Virgin Media over at the National Concert Hall, where Niall Quinn, Kevin Kilpan, Graham Souness and this man...
We would still have I'd still have a go for it. I miss... Do I need to explain that word? Will I explain it to Graham? It's like Melodeon.
I'm waiting to get that tonight, Melodeon. Tell Graham what that means.
Well, you have a go for it. It means that... Remember the way someone said, will you have a drink or something inside? If I'd have wanted a drink, I could have said, jeez, I have a great go for a drink now. It means I'd like one. Desire, that's the fancy word for it. Anyway.
Remember you're live on radio.
Our coach from the game, Brian Kerr from that indoor game, what a legend.
Yeah.
The goo.
I mean, he actually helped you win that game. His time wasting was ridiculous.
Can I give a little plug for Jumps Girls as well?
Yes, absolutely.
I haven't actually seen it yet, but the guys who've spoken to me about it, Vincent Hogan gave it a great appraisal. Katie Walsh speaks in the Racing Post today about, I suppose, you know, we all strive for equality, but she's basically saying that you have huge opportunities as a woman in racing. And this documentary on TG Carr on Thursday night just shows how far we've come in terms of women riders and trainers and massive ambassadors for our game. Rachel Blackmore this season, Bryony Frost, 4 winners at Cheltenham last year, and this captures, I think, the human side of them as well, just how great they are to deal with. And kudos for the lads for their documentary, and I think TG Carr have done a nice job on this.
There's 2 parts. First one's tonight, second one's this day next week.
I think it's tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, yeah. Okay.
So I think I'm presenting the show tomorrow night, so I don't really want people to not watch me, but they probably
DVR these. Exactly. Yeah, and it's on the player for a month afterwards as well.
Exactly.
So looking forward to that. Really can't wait to see it. Now, as I said, that's pretty much all we got time for on today's show. Owen and his beard are back tomorrow. Kenny Cunningham's in the studio talking Champions League and everything else. We have a piece with Will Fleury on the psychology of fighting in the octagon, and rugby as the Six Nations returns this weekend. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.